Brad Garlinghouse stood inside the White House this week, shoulder to shoulder with the people who run American finance. And XRP had a big breakout. No speech from Brad, a brief mention of Ripple from the administration, and then the moment passed. This is your XRP news desk, and I won't pretend that photo pays you anything, because you've been paid in photos for years, and they don't spend. But hold on before you sigh, because the real story this week isn't a room, it's a date, September 15th. Ripple's own chief legal officer just called that day the bellwether, and he said one sentence about what happens if the bill behind it dies that I think every holder needs to hear, and I'll get to it. Here's the plan. First the room, because some of what got said in there is genuinely remarkable. Then what September 15 actually is, because it isn't what most of the crowd actually thinks it is. And then a number, 232,000. That explains why Washington suddenly treats this industry like something it can't afford to lose. So start with the room. Garlinghouse appeared at the White House Crypto Summit alongside administration officials, the top financial regulators, and the biggest names in the industry. Armstrong from Coinbase was there, Tenev from Robinhood, Sethai from Kraken, and the coverage I opened says it plainly. No speech from Garlinghouse, a brief mention from Ripple, and an immediate breakout of XRP. That's the whole event as far as the chart cares, but listen to what got said in there, because the words were not small. Michael Selig from the CFTC Chair said the era of political warfare and regulation by enforcement is over. His exact frame was that innovators are welcome to the White House now, not railroaded to the big house. He even said they've, quote, exiled Gary Gensler. And Paul Atkins, the SEC Chair, talked up his agency's newly proposed crypto assets rule, the one he says gives builders certainty to raise capital in America using digital assets. Sit with who's talking. The two agencies this industry used to fear were standing in the White House promising rules instead of subpoenas. So did the price care? You can see that we had a decent push on the XRP chart. And I know you've lived through fear for years. The catalyst lands, the headline reads perfect, and the candle does nothing. But right now, XRP is sitting at near $1.15. And over the past 24 hours, it's up nearly 15%. So the tape is alive, and my read is simple, and I'll slay it slowly because it's the spine of the story. The market stopped paying for proximity a long time ago. Access is not output. A seat is not a signature. What moves this asset now is written law, voted on and hard to undo, and everything short of that scenery. If you'd rather have vote math than victory laps, subscribe and like the video, and this desk will be posting as soon as the counting starts. Now the date. Stuart Alderoty, Ripple's chief legal officer, spoke at the Wyoming Blockchain Symposium this week, and he drew a circle around September 15. There is a visible path for Clarity Act, he said. On September 15th, he said the Clarity Act gets its first procedural motion on the Senate floor, a motion to proceed, and it needs 60 votes. His words, September 15 will be the bellwether marker as to whether this continues to advance through Congress. And it wasn't just him. Brian Armstrong stood in the White House room and named the same date, saying he hopes the bill gets more than 60 votes come September 15. So what actually happens on that day? Does the Clarity Act pass on September 15? No, it doesn't. And this is where I think a lot of the crowd is about to get hurt by the own headline. A motion to proceed is not the bill. It's the vote on whether the Senate will even open a debate on the bill. And Alderoty's picture is the right one. He called it opening up the gate. 60 senators agreeing to unlock the door before anybody argues about what's behind it. So September 15th is not a finish line. It's the toll booth on the road that leads to one. And if it falls short, is that the end of it? Not the way that I read it. The bill is dead at that point, but the window narrows hard. And everybody gets an honest count of this industry's friend in that chamber. So bellwether is exactly the right word. A bellwether tells you which way the wind is blowing. It does not deliver the weather. And if you held through those weeks, you remember them better than I do. So no, I'm not telling you September 15 changes your life. I'm telling you that the first real vote count is on that day, and that's the thing this market has been genuinely waiting for. An account beats 100 summits. But here's the sentence that made me sit up, the one about what happens if it all stalls. We're going to have regulation one way or another. That's Alderoty. He says the SEC and the CFTC have both publicly They won't stop their crypto rulemaking, even if the legislation bogs down. And that's the two agencies we're now working closely together with, which they haven't always done. And they're not clearly waiting around. The same day he spoke, the SEC proposed a framework it calls Regulation Crypto Assets, with exemptions for smaller capital raisers, and listen to this part, a safe harbor under which a digital asset could stop being treated as a security once it meets certain conditions. Now say that one out loud. A written path for a token to walk out of the securities box entirely. Now, Alderoty still wants the law, and he says clearly about why. Legislation, in his words, it's sort of unbeatable, very hard to undo. A rule can be unwritten by the next chairman, but an act of Congress outlives him, and that's the difference between weather and the climate. The way I read the whole board, both roads now lead to the rules. One road is fast and durable, the other is slow and softer, and there is no longer a road marked none. For an asset that spent years being treated as the problem, XRP, that's a different world. Then he put a number on the stakes. His organization, the National Cryptocurrency Organization, estimates there are roughly 232,000 crypto-adjacent jobs in the United States, generating $55 billion in economic activity. And his warning is blunt. Get the framework wrong, and a real piece of that gets pushed offshore. Jobs, tax dollars, innovation, boarding a plane to somewhere with clearer rules. Now, you can argue his estimate, but notice what the argument is even about now, because the way that I read it, Washington used to debate whether this industry should even exist, and now it's debating how expensive it would be to lose. That's not a small shift. That's the entire negotiation changing sides. And the same research held one more finding. Honestly, it's the favorite thing in this whole story. So who actually holds crypto in this country? The picture in your head is probably a 24-year-old in a hoodie, but the data says otherwise, as many American holders are over 55 as there are under 25. Roughly a third are women, and more of them work in manufacturing and construction than in finance and tech. Alderoty's line is that the crypto bro reputation is fueled by the crypto haters, and the numbers back him. These are working people treating this as a supplement to traditional finance. That's his words, a way to create some independence. The room in Washington is finally starting to look like the room that was always out here. Is anybody actually behaving like September 15 matters? So follow the money, because spending doesn't lie about conviction. Fair shake. The political committee funding primarily Coinbase and Ripple reported a $193 million war chest in January, and by June, its affiliates had already put more than $82 million into primaries and special elections. And in one Florida House primary alone, an affiliate spent over $2 million on ads. You do not spend like that for a photo op. You spend like that when you believe the next Congress writes the rulebook for your entire industry. And when a 60-vote gate is close enough to touch, now both chambers are on recess until September. When they come back, the count starts. Drop your call in the comments. Does the motion to proceed clear 60 votes on September 15 or fall short? Because I want this room's count on the record before the roll is called. So let me land this honestly where it sits. A seat in this room is not a complete win. A name date is not a past bill. If you've held this asset for years, you've earned the right to look at the summit photo and feel absolutely nothing. But take everything this week and sort it into two piles. Pile 1 is ceremony, the summit, the mention, the applause, and pile 2 is machinery, a floor vote with a number and a date attached. Two regulators writing rules on the record, and a proposed safe harbor with a path out of the securities box, and a war chest built to shape the chamber that votes. The way I read it, ceremony stops moving this asset a long time ago, and machinery is what moves it now. And for the first time I can remember, the machinery pile is the heavier one. Now, none of this is advice. I don't know your own situation. This desk just reads the documents and the calendar out loud, and you can decide what they're worth. But an industry doesn't get 232,000 jobs, a Senate date, and a seat beside the regulators by accident. And my read is the era of beginning to exist is over, and the era of writing the rules has start time. If this sorted the ceremony from the machinery for you, hit the like button and subscribe. Stack facts, not fear, and I'll see you in the next video.